Welcome to Building the Basics, where we walk you through the why, what, and how of gun ownership.
Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to White Birch Armory in Dover, New Hampshire for allowing us to use their facilities for recording this evening. If you're in the area and you want to find a local gun shop to check out, I definitely recommend them. They have everything from new and used guns, accessories, ammo, fantastic range, and a lot of options for firearms training. Our guest today is Christy Painchaud, who's a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force, federal law enforcement, but most importantly for today, for this content specifically, she is a survivor of sexual assault. This is a topic that Marvin and I, we know is on the minds of a lot of people, but we didn't quite know how we could talk about it or address it. And we know that it can be tough to listen to or talk about. And we are very thankful for Christy for her willingness to share her story and her healing journey. So Christy, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're really looking forward to hearing how you can help us get the word out to our audience about this.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you. Thank you both for inviting me to be with you today. And congratulations on this new endeavor.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's so essential and important. And I commend you for, starting this up and just going for it, and sourcing people like myself and others. And I definitely respect, shedding light on the women's perspective. So that's kind of why I'm here. I was, happy to help you guys out and share kind of my journey on, my personal and professional experience in the firearms industry. I just didn't wake up and suddenly, graduate high school and think I was going to start carrying a gun and, do this. If you would have asked me this when I was 18, I definitely would have not said I'd be a firearms instructor later in my life, or even serve in the military for that matter. But, I think events happen in our life and things kind of unfold. But if you ask me, tell me about yourself, I'd say I'm just an average stay-at-home mama with two sweet little boys. They're now 9 and 11, but, I've worked hard my entire life, and I'm glad to be able to be at a place now where they are my full-time responsibility, and everything else is kind of, just I'm more purpose-driven now. I worked really hard when I was younger, and now I'm able to be there for them, and then also enjoy some other things with sharing my voice as a survivor, teaching women how to safely handle a firearm, men and women. I just don't teach women.
Sure.
And I'm also very immersed in my community with volunteer work. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah. Encompass a lot.
yeah. It's going to be a really exciting episode in the sense of this is something that we just, Marvin and I, we don't have personal experience about, and we really wanted to try and reach out to the female audience. And I know that you have wonderful classes and seminars and public speaking events that you do, and I'm really excited for you to help us reach that demographic. So yeah, it's a learning opportunity for us too, right? How can we help maybe direct people to you also, in the sense just getting more people to learn from you. So,
right. Yeah. My whole tagline is empowering, inspiring, others by sharing my survivor journey. So I'm all about awareness, prevention and education piece. I talk to my audience are high school students, young kids. I've done classes for children on just learning, gun safety. Partner Julie Golub, she has an amazing book out, resource out for things like that, all the way to I've had 85-year-old women in my classes.
Oh, wow.
So I would say I'm not afraid to alter, how I can help others, with education or prevention. So I think I like that. I'm able to share that with others. And I am a lifetime learner, so sure. I'm not one. I think I always tell my students, I'm always going to learn something from you today, and you'll learn something from me. And I think if you ever are with an instructor who says something different, maybe just kind of, let that sit and resonate, and that's kind of one thing I feel like as instructors, we always have to be open to evolving and growing and learning new things and new skills, because things change. Yeah. Things change quite, a lot. It's been, I'm 48, I'll be 50 in a couple years. It's where things were when I was 18 first shooting a gun.
Very different.
Much different.
Yeah.
Very, very different. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to, kind of delve into your experience, depending on how much you want to speak about, and it's up to you of what kind of detail or not detail you want to go into. But what do you think, Marvin? Do you have any questions before we kind of delve into that?
No, let's get into how you got started, why you got started. Would love to learn more about your story.
Yeah, so I'll kind of, we talk about, my personal experience, and that's not like, it didn't start there for me with like what happened to me at a very young age, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Like I feel like I was very, well, I guess there's two different ways we could talk about it. Like I'll either just talk about how the firearms piece came into play and then why I kind of use that as a healing piece to my journey, but also like why I chose the path that I chose because of what happened to me at a very young age. So, let me preface it. We're in New Hampshire. I'm not from New Hampshire. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. So very, very large city. I lived in a suburb. Our high school had like 570 kids in my graduating class, so it was very, very large. I was very immersed in the social butterfly person, the student council president, the drill team. So I think certainly was no, speakers coming to our school saying, "Be wary of this," "Watch out for this." So I don't want to say that I lived like life thinking I was invincible, but I think I felt a little more protected. I wasn't living in a high crime rate area, which now my perspective has completely shifted it into crime happens everywhere. And I think even more so in wealthier, affluent areas, and we just don't know about it because it's simply just not reported. You can't capture a statistic if you're not aware of things happening, right? My incident occurred between the summer of my junior and senior year. Like I said, I was the social butterfly out with my friends, and it was just the night, this was back in 1993. I just wanted to go home, and it was late, and I decided to walk home. I did try and call some people. Back then we had payphones, right? Yep. The little box with the payphone, and I called my house, and my mom answered, and my brother, so I hung up. I'm like, oh, it's only a couple of miles. I'll just walk. And honestly, the biggest fear I had that night was getting hit by a car. I took the longer path, so it was a safer walking path, thinking, I had no idea, like, my life would be forever changed in a matter of minutes. But it was, a complete, absolute stranger. I'm that, like, 2 out of 10% that, just violently attacked by a complete stranger walking down the street. He was obliterated, intoxicated, horrible. And I don't want to talk much about but I want to talk about what I did do, because I think after it is so important is, the fight, flight, or freeze is real. I ran, I screamed, I wish I screamed louder. Someone heard me later after I reported it. A woman heard me but didn't look out the window. There's so many things I could go back and say I wish I did or I didn't do. And that took me a really long time along my journey to kind of, it is what it is. You can't change what happened, but I can change how I process that and how I change going forward and turn that pain into power. But I reported it immediately after it occurred. I ran up to the first door I could see. So I want people listening to know, reporting is so essentially important. This particular attacker, I reported it, went to the hospital, did all these things, you think by the book, but he went free. He was never caught for many, many years, and I'll talk about that piece in a minute. But, I endured the horrible, awful sexual assault exam. I had to go through, the police, everything, but nothing is harder than the actual, everyone's like, oh, you can't go through all that. I can't speak for everybody because every situation is different, but I can say nothing I had to do was harder than enduring those few minutes during that attack, and knowing that I could put someone in prison who would not be able to harm others. That's what kept me awake at night. Those years he went free, is knowing who else was he hurting. And that really kept me awake at night. So, that's kind of, that happened, and here I was. I just tried to maintain the social butterfly status and just kind of, push through my senior year of high school. And it was very challenging because this is, again, back in 1993. There's not a lot of resources. There's not a lot of, people reaching out arms to help you. But I remember telling myself, this would not define me, and it wasn't going to rob me of my senior year happiness and all this and that. But deep down it did. I mean, it took a massive toll on my mental health. And I went to college afterwards for a little bit, but I wanted to go, I call it right state, wrong choice. It was Wright State University. I went there because all my friends were going there, but I had to call the campus police every night because I couldn't walk through the wooded all these. anxiety things that came up for me and not everybody else. So it changed me. I ended up leaving and coming back and just going to a community college. And I decided I wanted to I couldn't drive past the street where it happened one more day. And I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. So what the hell? Why not join the military, right?
Sure. Yep.
And that's what I did. So I joined the Air Force, and it was the best decision that I have ever made. It was a huge, powerful part of my life. But, and I'm telling you all this in like sequence because if you would have asked me when, at the beginning of my junior year if I would join the military, absolutely not, but this one personal horrible experience changed the trajectory and my perspective and the decisions I made for the rest of my life. I went on to have an amazing, successful career. I have an undergraduate in criminal justice, a master's degree in criminal justice. Not only did I want to and I was a cop, the cop in the Air Force Security Forces, then became a special agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So I kind of immersed myself in trying to understand and investigate crime. And then I wanted to study it on the educational aspect with a master's degree. So it kind of, in a lot of different careers, I kind of took different, when I got out from the active duty, I was in the reserves, and it's just kind of, I went into juvenile detention centers. I just kind of wanted to help kids, who were in my position, or just needed some help. I wanted to be able to give back. So, I don't want to talk the whole story. We can kind of break this up into pieces, but, the point being is it really just changed me, and I didn't know, I carried a gun for a living, as part of being, security forces in the military. I had a rifle all the time, handgun, it wasn't, at the time, if someone would have asked me to share my story, I would have been I would have melt down in tears and would not have been able to speak. So to sit here today with you guys and share this, I can't even tell you how profound I've come along my journey. And that's one thing I want to share with others listening to is there is strength in finding your voice and sharing that with others because it helps others. When I first started doing this back in 2007, I was doing an interview with one of our business partners, E3 Firearms Association, and he asked me what the word empowerment meant. And it was just I couldn't stop talking. And then it's just me being a survivor kind of came out in that dialogue. So it really, it's who I am, and it's who I share my experience, professional and personal, when I teach my classes now. While being in the military, I had a lot of different career paths. Being in the reserves, I had a few civilian jobs as well. But then I met my husband when I was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base back in 2004. I always joke, people are like, how did you guys meet? I'm like, should I tell them he taught me to shoot out of a moving car? Is that weird? But it's the God honest truth. I worked, I was on the Protective Service Operations team. So I did some really cool stuff in DC, protecting some high ranking dignitaries. And it was some of the best training and years of my life and my career. I absolutely loved it. How many women get to drive around the Russian Minister of Defense in a light armored vehicle? Not very many.
Yeah, that
sounds
sounds awesome.
Some people don't even know what an LAV is. You know what I mean? So it was really, really cool and an amazing experience, but that's how I met my husband. And, through courting and dating, I talk about my past and before, I always carried a gun on me, always, for my job. But I, when I was off, I didn't, I had my gun in my home. It was, but and he was like, why don't you start concealed carrying? I'm like, poof, why don't I, and it was a game changer for me for my healing journey because the anxiety dissipated because I was an avid runner. I would love to go running and always knowing is someone going to jump out again and attack me? I don't know, always having those what-ifs and living in different cities where I always wasn't aware of, who the local, homeless, you know what I mean? You don't know who's normal, who's not.
Right.
My settings are always changing. So having that, insurance policy as a tool to protect yourself was a huge game changer in my healing and helping me dissipate that anxiety. So I'm very grateful for my husband for kind of just planting that seed and then helping me. I as a federal agent, we had to conceal carry guns all the time. I had to carry a 229 for many years concealed, which was a little more challenging for women to conceal a gun and not just that, but 3 magazines, you know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
And your handcuffs and your OC spray. Like, it's not just a duty carry,
Yeah.
so it's a lot more than just a gun and a flashlight, that some civilians may just carry. So, I loved, that being able to share that piece of it and how I transitioned. And then when my husband's like, let's move to New Hampshire. He got out of the military. He was on active duty. And I'm like, where's New Hampshire? So up here we came, and kind of like fast forward, he took a position at 6 Hour Academy back in 2006. And then shortly after he started, they were looking for female instructors. And Linda Harris, God bless her soul, George Harris's, she had passed away a few years ago. George Harris was the director there at the academy at the time, and Linda was teaching women's classes, and, was like, oh, I want you to help me do this. And I'm like, this is great. Like, we maybe had 1 to 2 classes a year, and it was amazing to be in the room with only women. It was just a different dynamic. And I loved how open and how comfortable women were with just that women-only environment. So it was something I knew from day one in 2006. I would forever be a place in my heart to be able to teach, women-only classes. And then in New Hampshire, the Kimberly Cates murder happened. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of that, yeah. Yep.
So that happened, and then it was like a switch flipped, like overnight, like 6 hours, massive, right? We get students from all around the
world.
nation. Yeah. But specifically New Hampshire, like, we were going from 1 to 2 classes a year to like 1 a month almost, like in the demand. We just kept putting more on the books. Our female instructor staff grew, so it really, like, I really just watched it unfold before my eyes. And so it was pretty amazing. And then while also wearing my simultaneously hat and being in the reserves, going on and off active duty, like, having the options, the concealed carry clothing lines, became much better for women, just people started talking more about it. So it was really kind of cool to see, how it progressed and evolved. So I did that for quite a few years, about 10 years. And then my husband left the corporate world. We slowed our lives down. We retired from the military. And I was like, I think it's time to start sharing my voice on a public platform. And that's kind of when I did it. In 2017, like I said, during an interview, and then 2018, I launched my little social media pages. And I'm like, okay, if it helps one person, all of this is worth it. But I didn't realize I would be that one person first, like with my healing journey. So, but every time I share my story, and I hear one right back. So it's kind of been profound in that aspect. But so I do the public speaking events on raising awareness and education. Was able to speak before my high school alma mater back in Ohio in the high school class. And I was so nervous because, high school kids, like, I'm like, what are they going to listen to me? And I really wanted them to truly listen, because that's like the girl where I once sat. That's like, that was me. And I really want them to hear what I have to say, because you're not invincible, and, and you can help. And so it was amazing. They were so attentive, on the edge of their seats. I've got like probably 10 thank you letters. And it was just so surreal, and just be able to touch lives and share a true experience where, not only did I survive it, but I'm now thriving. And to be able to share your voice, it was just incredible. So I continue to do that, and then share the firearms training piece. It's pretty amazing, like, to be able to share that with women. And we were talking before we turned on the mics here, and my class style was not just about, marksmanship, your grip, the fundamentals of the nomenclature. It's not just about that for me. For me, it's about sharing my personal experience and having women, like, plant the seed of shifting your mindset, of this can happen to you, whether you're here just because you want to check it off your bucket list, or your husband forced you to come, or you're doing for your daughter, whatever the case is. Like, it's not just about learning how to safely, press the trigger. It's about the fundamentals and shifting your mindset, and to have a plan, and to be prepared, and to have not just a life insurance policy that benefits the others when you die, but what are you doing to protect your life, like right now? So it's a good place. I love what I do, and I'm grateful grateful to be able to share awareness and education with, other businesses like yourself. So
Yeah.
I'll stop talking. Do you guys got questions?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I have a whole list in my head. Marvin, you kick it off though. I gotta process a little bit because I gotta figure out
Pause, Christy.
No, it's all good. I want to figure out like the order of how I want to ask. So Marvin, if you got something lined up, go for it.
Yeah, just real basically, you were talking about women who've given you feedback, the reasons why they were coming to your classes. So I guess my question is, from all of the conversations you've had in the past, what would you say the biggest misconception that most women have against purchasing a firearm or having a firearm on their person? Or what may be the biggest reason for hesitation for most women to go out and get a firearm, carry, whether it's protective mindset of their own, or maybe a hesitation due to, I guess, the social connotations of carrying a firearm or operating a firearm.
Right. I think, I know. It's fear. Like, people are afraid, women specifically, or anybody really, that students that I've encountered, they're afraid. The fear of not knowing how to safely handle the gun, or that they're going to hurt somebody else or hurt themselves. That is by far like number one. And this is like some people that have never touched a gun, and then there's the people, who were like at Uncle Bob's farm, and someone just hands them a loaded like 45, and they're like, what in the world? You know what I mean? Like, it was just, so it's just, I think, fear of not knowing how to safely operate it, and it's a deadly weapon. It's just like throwing someone in the seat of a car, and they've never driven before, and say, go ahead, here you go, without giving you any instruction. So definitely just eliminating that fear component. And in my classes, I absolutely, it's one of the coolest things to witness, to see. And I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, so you kind of have a good pulse on, the nonverbals, the body language, people coming in. You kind of know like who's ready to press the trigger and who is like might cry and they're trembling, like you really do. And I say, I'm going to meet you where you are. And I always have my students tell me a little bit about themselves, and particularly like why they're there, right? Some women just want to be there because they want to, build on their skills. Some people are there because, they want to, it's one of their bucket lists. They're there because they're just afraid. They want to learn how to safely use the gun. They may not have a gun, and they may leave deciding it's not for them, but they just wanted to see if it is. Like, they just want to build their knowledge and educate themselves properly. But I always think it's important, and I do that for my students because I want all of them to see that they're very similar in their reasoning for be there. So they we build, on the camaraderie of having our class go together, and feel that they're not alone. And, I share this can be something, you use as a life-saving skill, maybe a hobby, or you can get into competitive shooting or hunting. It's not just, in the old age saying of, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And just like the people that, the car and the china, the knife, you know what I mean? Or anything, can be used as a weapon or a tool if it's used, if it's a planned attack to do harm, you can improvise anything to kill people. So, it's fear, number one.
So on that topic of the fear, so do you find that there's a lot of progress after that one class or that one seminar, or say that you're doing like that intro women's only class, do you find that if, say, you have 20 women that's in a class and you go through, what is it, usually like an 8-hour course that you're taking or that you're teaching? Okay, so in that 8 hours, do you find that there's a lot of progress of comfort when it comes to whether it's the, like you said earlier, like the mechanics and the handling, but then also that mindset? Do you think that it's a huge jump?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And I also think, I'm very strategic about how I do it too. Like, they don't have guns in their hands for a couple hours,
Sure.
but they start with them sitting on the table. You know what I mean? I'm
walk
like,
in
these
and they're right
guns
there,
are
yeah.
not going to go off. They're going to
Yep.
sit on the table.
Yep.
You're not to touch them. You know what I mean? I'm very clear. And we literally spend a good half hour to 45 minutes just talking about safety, you know, like trigger finger discipline, muzzle management. Like I really hone it on. So I teach a crawl, walk, run process where I assume all of you know nothing, even if you've been shooting your whole life, you know, everyone's on the same page, and you just kind of watch everything unveil. And I empower them and constantly like having them go back and check themselves. So tell me what this is again, you know, and we just build upon that, and you literally just watch their confidence grow. Even when we get out to the range, like we're doing dry drills in the classroom, we're out on the range doing dry drills, and then by the time, I mean, they're ready to shoot that first shot, you know, and then, you know, then they, after class, they're like, this is fun. Like, I want to come back for a private class for an hour, you know what I mean?
Yep.
There's been, I'm not going to say there's some people that it just like, it's very rare, you know, obviously I'm not teaching every single weekend, you know, but in the almost 20 years I've been teaching, there's probably been 2 or 3 students where there's just sometimes, you know, some people are just so petrified, and they just can't get past,
Sure.
you know, usually it's the noise, you know, right? They wouldn't do it with a dry gun, and it's the noise, you
It's
know.
a giant explosion going off in your hand.
Yeah, and
Like,
that's why we do the whole inoculation. Like I shoot
Yep.
before, you know, it's again, building upon it and trying to get them as comfortable as they can. But absolutely, like I would say 99.9% of my students leave there completely glowing with confidence and empowering and feeling like they can confidently pick up a handgun and know how to safely, you know, handle it and shoot it. And I also empower them to share that knowledge with others. Like if you walk into a gun store and someone's pointing the trigger, you know, pointing the muzzle at you
Right.
and hand you a gun, like walk out, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Not the place for you.
Like,
Yeah.
like just no, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, and it's not, you know, it's just ignorance, you know, if someone's not taught properly, but you can share that knowledge with others. So
Well, it's not only that, but then there's also the piece of sharing, you know, from that, from the perspective of the person that took that class. It's like, you know, fearful going in, and then sharing that with somebody else, not just the mechanics like you said, but also, you know, the mindset. It's like I went in fearful, and then 8 hours later I come out and I'm like, this is a lot of fun, right? So it's, and especially like Marvin and I were trying to encourage females to do that, and this is what we're exactly hoping for to hear from you, is that, you know, the 99.9% of people that you're teaching is just they love it.
They do. They love it. And I always make a point, if I remember, because, you know, I'm a one-man show. I do all my marketing, my pictures. I'm like, you know, but taking a picture, you know, I always take a picture with my students because I want them to stand proud. And I also want other women to realize these aren't G.I. Janes taking these classes, right? They have like some, you know, image in their head that it has to be this type of person. No, these are nurses, real estate agents, school teachers, you know, just stay-at-home moms, grandmothers, moms and daughters. Like my last class, I had a 16-year-old with her mom. Like these are just average, you know, women, now responsible, you know, gun owners, or if they don't, they're going to go out and buy one, you know, or maybe they don't, you know, whatever. I just plant the seed of knowledge and encourage them to, if you do choose this path, like choose education, and this will make you feel more comfortable and expand upon that confidence, and it will just grow from there. And it's a lot of fun. It's free. It's therapy. Not always free, but it's therapy.
And then when you have, you mentioned that during your classes that you will speak a little bit about your story, right? So have you found, and I'm sure it's not every single class or seminar or anything, but do you find that in those classes that you'll have other women that'll, you know, raise their hand or, you know, something, and then they'll speak about their story, and maybe it becomes a little bit of a emotional time where you're having to, you know, kind of go back and forth with somebody who might be struggling with something, and, you know, the class might shift gears a little bit to, you know, talk about that. Like, have you
absolutely. You know, and not everybody is, I mean, even the speaking seminars that I do here at White Birch, after class, someone will come up and, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a shooting class. It'd be, or a handguns fire training class. It's any speaking engagement. But yes, not all of them disclose publicly.
Sure.
In front of everybody. But I have had some, more so domestic violence survivors. I've had quite a few students who are taking the class because their offender is getting out of prison, upcoming, and they're fearful. So that, that kind of hits home. It scares me because I know, like, it's just a piece of paper at the end of the day that's protecting them, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, and especially in rural town, New Hampshire, we know, if there is a police officer on duty at night, like you have to be your own first responder and live a self-reliant life. And you can't just say, I'm going to be self-reliant, I'm going to do this, but give yourself the tools, like set yourself up, make your home a hard target, like have the home defense, like square up your security, the security perimeter. Like, it's not just about the gun. Like, that's the last resort. Yeah. God forbid you ever have to use your gun, but we have an alarm system, lock your door, you know what I mean? All these things that we kind of go through. And I have like all these seminars that me and my husband and I kind of, arm out on too, because you can only cover so much in this short amount of time. And, but yeah, to answer your question, a lot of my, at least a class will come and either tell me in class or after class. And you got to do the trigger disclaimer warning, I'm like, what I'm going to talk about today, just breathe if you have to get up and leave. Like, I don't go into the full, obviously, like all the details. I just say I'm standing here and I'm sharing this personal experience because I am a survivor of a violent crime. And, so. Yeah.
Marvin, what do you have?
I just would like to dive a bit more into the mindset of owning your own safety, because you touched upon that quite a few times as you were talking about talking to high school students, as you're talking to your students in your class. So how does that generally start out for a lot of your students? What is that mindset for owning their own safety, and how does that change by the end of the class or by the end of one of your speaking engagements?
I think just asking them the what ifs, and planting that seed and just saying, so many people just call the police, and like, okay, well, what if they don't come? You know what I mean? And just putting them in the spot. And I think in just sharing what I do personally, or, how things have affected me personally, it's not being paranoid. It's just being prepared and having a plan. But I definitely, it's like you could visibly see the little wheels turning in their head, as I'm talking, when I'm telling them these things. They're like, oh my God, I don't have motion lights in my house. I don't have an alarm system. I don't lock my doors. I don't lock my windows. You can see them like processing the information. And I definitely, they're like, wow, you've covered so much. And I always follow up with an email, and I give them a list of resources, and I talk about even things about carrying tourniquets, like my friend, Carrie Davis with Dark Angel Medical. I'm like, you can, get this, like, these are just simple little things. You're going to carry a gun, you need to carry a tourniquet, just especially if you're like hiking or doing things, where you can get injured, just planning little pieces of safety in their brains, like, okay, there's things I didn't think about. And even like when I talk to the high schoolers, when, it's strength in numbers. Like that night of my talk, had I been with somebody else, or if I didn't even walk at all, but I can't change the past, but this is in 1993, it was a different world back then. I remember riding my bike to school by myself when I was in third grade too. Like, I would never let my kids do that now. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a different world that we lived in. But where I was going with that is just, strength in numbers. Like the Air Force, we always had this wingman concept. And when I first started sharing my story, I can't tell you how many friends I went to high school with messaged me and told me about things that happened to their daughters when they first tried alcohol at a party, and they were raped, and their friends just left them at a in a bathroom puking in the toilet, or what I mean, just all these, and it's not their fault, but like, you didn't have a plan going in, like, hey, if I drink too much, like you do with designated drivers, like, okay, you're driving tonight, I'll just whatever, have a plan going in. And I say that even to the men in the room. Obviously men are not they don't escape sexual assault. Again, you don't hear about it because it's not reported, and not as much, but the statistics are still there. Not as high as women victims, but men are victimized as well. What was I saying? Oh, so having like a plan and having, always have somebody with you, things like that are just the ways that we can better prepare and plant the safety seed for, shifting that mindset, when we walk into a restaurant or a movie theater, like where we sit matters, like we're watching, in my training and for like protective service operations, we're always watching like eyes and hands, like things, you're always kind of just being a little more situationally aware. But they do switch on, those students, but it's something you forget if you're not constantly, I think, reminded or take the steps to practice.
Yeah, there's a topic that's a slight exit turnoff real quick that I want to hit on because you were saying about folks that are under 21 that you said there was a daughter and her mom that were taking the course together. I think you said she was 16, which is great. It's great to have that exposure. I think that's something that people need to do more is expose their kids to firearms so that they know the proper use and training and all that. So that's really great that you allow that too. In the situations where, whether it's due to local state laws or anything like that, where it's extremely difficult for people to procure a firearm for self-defense or for concealed carry or something like that, do you also talk about other methods of self-defense, like maybe knives or martial arts, or do you talk about other ways that women specifically can protect themselves if it's just, I'm thinking of California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, right? I can go down the list of, probably 10 or so that are just really, really difficult. And it's a long and arduous process, things that they can do to still have a bit of safety in that mindset of self-defense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I do talk about that. But it's just knowing your local and state laws. If you're at a campus or a college, do they allow carry? Do they not? Can I have pepper spray? Can I not? We talk about different tools you can have. And a lot of women too, they like the self-defense classes. And, I'm not going to say that I wasn't trained. I've done Krav Maga. We've done, defensive fighting tactics. I had to do it. But you think I'm going hands-on with someone who's twice my size?
Sure, yeah.
Forget it. You know what I mean? Obviously, if my gun was, obviously I didn't have something, obviously you fight till you die, right? But, yeah, giving people tools. But ultimately, your gun is the ultimate equalizer. And I tell everybody you can't bring a knife to a gunfight because you're going to lose. It's not if, it's you are going to lose.
Right.
So it's, knowing your laws and being aware of what you can and cannot have and being a law-abiding citizen. But unfortunately, it's so hard, a lot of, especially on college campuses where the majority of the age from women 17 and 22 are being, and the sexual assault crimes are so high, but they can't defend themselves with the tool that you're talking about. People are so discouraged because they can't, or they can't run with a gun, or I can't bring it back on campus. And I'm just so, I'm not telling you to break the law and become a felon, but, know your laws and there are ways that you don't have to compromise your safety, but still be a law-abiding citizen. But I think we're making progress in that category, and I hope that it continues to evolve and, more for the better because, criminals don't pay attention to those.
Well, that's the thing. A law is pointless to criminals because they're going to break the law anyway.
And I will say this. So know the difference between a rule and a law.
Oh, could you expand on that a little bit?
So a rule. So if you walk into I won't name names, but a department store or a restaurant, and it says firearms prohibited, that's a rule. That is not a law. Right. However, if you travel, and I'll share this, we were going through, I was in an NRA show in Texas a few years back, and there was a sign on the window. It was firearms prohibited. And in that state, if it was the way the wording was, it was a law. Right.
Okay.
I'm ironic that we're hosting the NRA and we're at this hotel that I'm we're in Texas for God's sake. I never thought I would see that sign anywhere, but I did. And my husband and I just kind of chuck over okay, we'll be staying somewhere else or whatever. So I'm just hysterical. if you are caught in said store or restaurant with your gun, which should never happen unless you're fighting for your life or your family's life, you're not brandishing it, you're not showing it, you're not like
Concealed carry for a reason.
Concealing it. Yeah. And if you think you can open carry, like you're just dumb, like just don't do that. But the point being is, could they ask you to leave? Absolutely. Could they trespass you because you violated that? They could call the police and trespass you. Could you get arrested? No. So knowing the difference between a rule and a law, knowing those differences, in your state specifically, and then like if you're in a place like Boston, they may be different, or New York City, or, knowing what the rules and laws are in your local ordinances and your state are very, very important. But also knowing the difference between a rule and a law is essential, because it's interpretation, and you need to know the difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think that's a great segue to the next topic, which is female concealed carry. You touched on it a little bit before about how far it's come since you started. But I think as you were talking about, you shouldn't be showing that you are carrying a firearm. You shouldn't be brandishing. And nobody should know that you're carrying a concealed weapon. What are some of the, accessories or techniques that you offer to your students to help them carry concealed, and just make sure that doing it in a smart way, legally, and ideally comfortably?
Yeah, we have come a very long way. When I first started concealed carrying, back in 2001 for my job in the Air Force, if female pants even had belt loops, we were lucky, right? And we had our like little limited express suit and everything was tapered. So I'd have to buy it like 2 sizes bigger. Otherwise my gun would be honking, sticking out, because everything was just silhouetted to the body. So it was just a nightmare to try and like buy clothes, and then to buy clothes that you had to like conceal a gun. Obviously outside the waistband, carry was like my first thing, because that's what the guys were doing, or we were issued this holster. And I'm like, okay, and then I realized how horribly uncomfortable that was for a woman, especially when you have to go to the bathroom. I quickly transitioned to a shoulder holster. Yes, do you sacrifice maybe, a little bit less time on your draw? Absolutely. But it is my back and my hips, when you're slinging a gun for 12, 13 hours a day, shoulder holster all day long, you know what I mean? For my body type, for my mission, it met, the needs that I still needed. Ankle carry, like different, thigh rigs, belly bands, like all kinds of different ways you can carry for my professional job. And then when I would be off duty, carrying concealed, again, things have changed. The belly band was like the unisex belly band. Now we have comfort concealment bands. That's a great product. And we have the sticky holster band. There are Dean Adams, she makes it a really nice, they actually sell them here at White Birch, I believe. The corset holsters, like not only are they like functional and pretty, but they're, they're comfortable, and they're very, come a very, very long way. I really like the Filster, the Enigma holster, because it's more like finding where you're going to carry. Is it appendix? Am I carrying low in the back or my shoulder? There's a lot of, there's purse holster options, A&R, T-Rex. A&R is in New Hampshire. Do you know them?
Oh, yeah,
they're
yeah.
a New Hampshire-based company.
Yep.
Love Alex.
Yeah, I shoot some competitions with Alex.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
He's a good guy.
And T-Rex, I really like T-Rex arms. They have some great holsters there too. Even the Galco pocket holsters are awesome. I was listening to one of your guys, your last podcast about the winter carry, and it's so true. I'm like, hallelujah. Like I can wear, now I have this on and I have a vest. It's just I don't have to worry, and I can wear my cute little clothes without printing, where you just feel a little more feminine, where, carrying concealed, it's a lifestyle change. And I tell, men and women that you have to train. You have to, and not just a physical training class. You need to be aware of your laws and your state, and you have to train drawing that gun from that conceal. And you can't be switching it up every day if it's not something you do proficiently or professionally. but the options these days, 2024, are absolutely endless. I've seen some pretty crazy. I think they have Brawl and like the Thunder. I have one of my guy friends. He wears like that. It's like a Thunderwear thing.
Oh, I don't think I know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love like the belly bands. I mean, I think it all depends on, different shapes and sizes of your body. So I always tell people, like, don't get discouraged if you buy something because your favorite YouTuber or influencer you watch carries it and you're like, I want to carry that. And you get it and you're like, this sucks. It's uncomfortable. And if it's not comfortable, you're not going to wear it. It's not going to be practical. But be prepared to change up your wardrobe, spend some money, because, if you have a gun for home defense, it's not the same gun you're going to put on your person, and carry for a concealed carry. So it's a huge lifestyle change, but the options are absolutely endless. And it's just, I could just go on for a long time about that, but
Sure.
Education is so key to implementing that change in training.
Yeah, and it's kind of in my mind, it's kind of a great thing that there's so many options nowadays. But in your mind, where can women start? Where can they? So you mentioned your favorite YouTuber or influencer and something like that, right? But it's like, gosh, where do you even start? Like if one of our listeners is female and trying to be like, okay, well, I got these options, I don't know where to look. I mean, do I have to buy and try? And then if I don't like it, can I not return it? All those questions are, because like you said, it might be some money.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it all depends like where you are. Obviously, I think I like to direct people to like maybe their closest like gun range. It could be a fish and game club or a local training range for in-person training. I also recommend, there's a ton of online training. Some platforms, I know like my husband, the E3 Firearms, like if you can sit at home and like study something and learn about the basics and then go and apply that, like that's golden, and it's also a reference tool. Like you can pay all this money to take a fancy class, but you can't refer back to it, So I'm a firm believer in the online education component. I mean, look at colleges, for God's sakes. Like everything you have a resource to come back to, whereas these like in-person trainings, when you study it, it's gone, So it's nice to have that education platform to come back to. So find a good reputable one for that. E3 Firearms obviously is just one that I'm thinking of. And then, obviously the influencers. I really I like some chick who shoots. She's really cool. I like her.
I follow her.
I love her. She's a hoot. And she's someone who's reputable. She grew up on a firing range, so it's not like she's just some gun bunny who fell out of the sky and is gorgeous and has the body to wear and model all these things. Because let's be real, not everybody looks like that or has is dealing with like a tummy or different size breasts or just we all come in different shapes and sizes. And I think that it's great that she shows different ways to carry, following people like that. Like I really like Julie Golub. She's a professional shooter, also Army veteran for Smith & Wesson. Love her. Again, Dean Adams. She has a great product line. Alexa Athletica. They do a lot of just concealed carry clothing. Great running pants. I really like their little running pants. But also I feel like watching people like that, but you don't want to get stuck on social media scrolling or watching reels. Like you really want to be like in the room with these people. A Girl and a Gun, that's a great nationwide. They have local chapters all over. I'm a firm believer, online education is great, online things, but if you can get in the room with some like-minded people and kind of have some takeaways or just someone you can go shooting with, not everybody, has a lot of friends, but if they can put themselves in the room with like a local chapter of women who are, 2A, movement, Women for Gun Rights, that's a great organization too. And they have local chapters and
pretty much every state, I think, too, or a lot of states. Most states.
I don't know how many chapters they have offhand, but I think A Girl and a Gun's a little bit larger in their chapter status. But I think just immersing yourself in something like that, and they're not super costly. I think there's like an annual membership fee, but I think just starting locally, that would be my biggest recommendation, is what's in your backyard, because that's going to be the least expensive, the most accessible, what I mean, and practical for you to go and implement. And unless you can shoot in your backyard, I shoot in my backyard, it's in New Hampshire, we were able to do that, but not everybody can, but I had SIG, I was teaching at a, 200 acre plus, training academy for over 12 years. So we had access to a range like that, but if you don't, just joining a local gun club or a fishing game club where you have access to it is, I think, start there.
Yeah, that's great. We try overall to not say, oh, this is the gun that you should buy, right? Because we all have our own personal preferences. Marvin, we always talk about that with Tim, right? So we have our personal preferences, and everything's a compromise and all sorts of stuff like that, right? And it's true. Marvin, myself, and our buddy Tim, we make a joke of it because that's like his tagline. Like, he's always talking like those things, and it just makes me smile. But it's true though, because there's something for everybody. But in your mind, where are those things that you're like, okay, here's like the top 5 that if you're looking to make your first purchase as a female, you want to get into the firearms culture, obviously you're taking classes and trying to figure out what am I doing it for and all those kinds of things. But what are some maybe top 3, 5 firearms that females start to look at?
Well, before I answer that's
sure.
like I always tell people,
a lot of caveats,
probably.
Caveat,
like, and I even talk to, and this is like one of the outlines when I teach is you have to know your purpose. Mm-hmm. It's like going and shopping for shoes or a car. Am I like having a midlife crisis and I want a sports car? Do I need an SUV to fit my family of 6, right? Or am I shopping for stilettos for my prom dress, or do I need hiking boots? Like, if you don't go into the gun store with a purpose, like it's going to be overwhelming, intimidating, and they're going to try and sell you a pimped out 1911 with $3,000. You know what I mean? Like, you really need to hone in on what your purpose is. And
did you listen to our second episode where we had
no?
It's literally one of our topics. It's like, you have to know what you're going in to buy for.
Yeah, you have to know what you're going in for. And if you go into a store and they don't ask you that, they should be like guiding you, like, oh, are you looking for just a little, pocket carry revolver? Are you looking for a hunting rifle or a home defense gun that we can add, a light to? We need a rail for accessories. Like, if they're not asking those questions, they should be.
Sure.
Right. So I think knowing your purpose first. I think with that, it's really like we're all different. Like you mentioned it, like there are certain guns people are like, I love that. I'm like, I absolutely hated that. And it always cracks me up when my students come in and I allow students to bring their own gun if they have it, because I want that builds on their confidence and their ability to be able to shoot the gun that they have in their home. So I always throw that in there and let them bring it. And there's, it makes me nervous sometimes because I don't know people are going to show up and I don't have the time to like, what are you bringing? What are you bringing?
Sure.
Sometimes they're like, I don't know what this is. It's in my box. My husband bought it for me 5 years ago, and they just like slide it across the table. Obviously, everything I make sure everything's
it's
like unloaded for they come in, and
Yep.
I'm like, oh sweet baby Jesus, like what is happening? But when they're, oh, it's like pink and it's small and it's cute. I'm like, there's such the misconception that women think because they're small, they're easier to shoot. I'm like, they're the hardest guns to shoot. The hardest guns to be most accurate with. They're
Marvin's
snappy
nodding
little
his
suckers.
head.
Like,
Yep.
they're just, it's such a misconception. And I'm like, ladies, trust me. And I always, if they come in with like, a small Hellcat or, the LCP, I'm like, let me just put a full-size gun in your hand and you like have an epiphany. Like, you'll feel it. You'll know there's much more metal to absorb that recoil, and then they get it. So, I'm just with like gun specific, like, I was a ride or die my 226. Like, I love my 226. I carried my 229 for years. I finally transitioned the past couple of years to the Glock 19, and I love that. I have a red dot on it now. Like, the gun industry progressing, like iron sights versus a red dot. It's a game changer. I still teach my students the fundamentals of marksmanship with iron sights, because you have to know, batteries and red dots fail, right?
Yep.
You have to have a fail-safe plan. I love the G43, Glock 42, Glock 43. I love those. The 238, 938s. I love the SIG line. They're all the Smith & Wesson, the Easy. I did pick, and I pick up a couple different guns, not always the guns that I carry, but I pick them up because I know what I like. My students may not. So I like to have a variety of options, so they can, a 365, here's a 320, here's, a Smith & Wesson Easy or an M&P, like, so have to feel the difference. So there's a lot, but again, it all comes back to your purpose and like, what works for me may not work for somebody else. Like you and I probably won't be concealing the same size gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus, so it all depends on, the purpose of why you're carrying, and you tell them, obviously, there's pros and cons to everything. Like, obviously, I would want more ammo. Hell yeah. But is it going to fit on my hip? Probably not.
And legally, depending on the state, are you allowed to have more? So that's a whole other thing.
More than 10-round magazine if you go, or I can't carry my hollow points when I travel through New Jersey. Like, having to know that and know all those state laws, it's important. But you don't have to compromise your safety. And I can't foot stomp that enough. Like, just knowing where you go and researching the laws. Like, we recently took a trip out to Hawaii. It was a nightmare. And I kind of because I fall under the HR 218. I'm a retired law enforcement agent, so I keep up on those.
You can do whatever you want, pretty much.
To an extent, yes. But Hawaii, and I lived there for 4 years, when I was a cop, my first duty station in the Air Force. So I'm like, I wanted to take my family back 30 years later. So in Hawaii, you have to go in and declare to the police station, even if you are retired law enforcement. So I was like, am I going to put my family through all of this rigmarole? And we were island hopping. Like, it was just a nightmare, but it was so frustrating that I had to plan and research and do all of these things just so I had the right to defend myself and protect my family. And, I think it prevents good people from caring for the right reasons sometimes, but you have to research it and know, like, I don't think I have carte blanche to go anywhere.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but, I know,
yeah,
absolutely. And sometimes I'm a little ignorant in some of the different state laws, that I don't travel to because I'm like, wow, but I know the one, like New Jersey got that unlocked, know all the points,
right.
Certain things like that.
Well, I think it's I forget the exact number, but it's something like in totality across the country, whether it be federal, state, or local, it's something like 20,000 laws that are related to, the blanket term of gun control, right? And it's a lot that you have to educate yourself on. Of course, it's not 20,000 in every single state, but
right.
it's just that's the reality of what we as responsible gun owners deal with. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They don't know that, or they might just be ignorant to it because the media, in my opinion, they have their own, way of reporting things. I just want to be a responsible gun owner. I don't want to have to comb through 20,000 laws, and it's just tough. So I'm guessing you probably feel similarly.
Yeah, I do. And you can't give everybody that, you can just defer them to resources where they can find the answers, because it's just so.
Yeah, it would be impossible
so
to.
Many.
Yeah, and at the same time, we are definitely not trying to cross legal,
right.
Those legal grounds. We are not, as this podcast, we are not trying to be your legal contact. We are not lawyers, and we emphasize that in another episode. I think it was the home defense one or concealed carry, but it's like we are not your lawyers. So.
Yeah. Education is key. I know my husband, he does seminars here too for the rules of armed defense. And
oh yeah, he just did one. I think, what was it, last weekend or something like that?
I can't.
It was recent, very recent. Yeah.
But just taking seminars like that. Again, these are non-shooting seminars, so it's not like people think you have to press a trigger every time you have some firearms education component is false, but just the more I think the more confident you'll be, and the more responsible citizen, gun owner will be.
Yeah. Marvin, what do you think?
I think I got a theme going on, which is carrying a firearm is not the most convenient thing. Right? Whether it's, can I carry it comfortably? Can I conceal it well? Or am I traveling with it? What does my local law or state law look like for me to be able to carry? I think that's the theme that I'm pulling out of this. And whether that's right or wrong, it's something that every gun owner should take seriously, and something that everybody should take classes and seek resources and gain that understanding so that they can carry a firearm or carry the right firearm to protect themselves in, I guess, the legislative environment that they live in, as well as from a comfort and daily life standpoint.
Yeah. I think so. Education and knowing your laws and making sure, and they change.
Yeah, I mean, there was just earlier this year we had another 1 or 2 states that went full constitutional carry.
Yeah,
so it's up to, I think it's 29 now, 29 out of 50, right?
Yeah,
so
and
it's
federal law is going to change here.
Yep.
It's January 20th.
Yeah,
so
yep.
a ton, and it's going to be interesting to see
and that national reciprocity is going to be huge.
Yeah, and it's going to be seeing how state laws change in response to that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just stay on your P's and Q's. You know what I mean, and be resourceful. There's a lot of great free resources out there. Definitely you can refer back to.
Yeah, like you said, laws do change, and it's something that Marvin and I continue stressing is just how important it is to be up to speed on what's happening in the environment, whether it be local, state, or federal laws.
Absolutely.
And classes are probably the best way to do that.
Yeah, well,
right? Because your instructors are probably going to be.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be, if you don't have to have a $5,000 budget every year to attend a class to say
would be
fresh.
really nice,
that
though.
would be cool, but let's be realistic.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Having free online education, you could be a member of or NRA, U.S. Concealed Carry. There's a lot of free resources out there. Just make sure whoever you're following or watching is vetted. There is a lot of, you have to filter through some misinformation out there. Just making sure it's a trusted, vetted source, I think is important.
Yeah, and having that... like you said, either looking at E3, right, as another source. Another one that Marvin and I have referenced in the past is called shootingclasses.com, and it's just where you pop your zip code or your state and search radius into the search field, and it'll return either the instructors or the classes that people have coming up. There's been a couple classes that I've taken in the past with Boone and Tonto, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, they have their classes up there too, or at least it did. I haven't checked recently, but yeah, it was a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah, Boone's a great guy.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's fun.
So with that, just tell us again about your social media, where people can find you, your classes. I know that you've got some coming up. You had talked about one coming up in December, and we'll put all of this in the description, links and everything, but just so that people can hear and walk away with it.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Christy Painchaud LLC. Under Instagram and Facebook, it's just Christy Painchaud, and it's hot bread. It's French, Painchaud.
Oh, fancy.
I know. I went from Kelly to Painchaud. Not easy. And on my website, it's christypainchaud.com. So I do put up, again, events and seminars. So the next class I have coming up is a seminar at White Birch Armory, and it's Concealed Carry for Women for Best Practices. And that's a monthly ladies' night that they host here. And it's from 5:30 to 7:45 on December 4th. So it's a Wednesday night. And that, again, if you're part of a local, gun club or range, that's a benefit that White Birch offers, not only to their members, but just drop in. You don't have to be a member of White Birch to attend. But it's a monthly membership class or monthly ladies' night that they do initiative. So it's great. Every month it's a new topic. So I'll speak for an hour, and then the ladies get to go out their range and shoot. So I go out there and shoot with them too. So it's a lot of fun. And the topics we kind of break up. I usually speak during Sexual Assault Awareness Month just because it's relevant, and they, I like sharing my story with them, and kind of helps feed that mindset mentality of living a self-reliant life, and they hear a very, moving, inspiring story, and then they get to go shoot. So it's kind of cool, but they have a lot of great guest speakers here. So yeah, you can find me there. I teach, I do about 3 to 4 group classes a year. I'm not teaching a lot these days. I'm semi-retired, but I do private classes as well. I do probably more of those than I do the group classes, just because there's more flexibility with that. But I also stay busy doing other stuff with running a local farmers market that I started. So I'm kind of a transition in my life where I'm just trying to do a little more things. But I do want to go back to one thing, because I didn't finish the whole survivor story about what happened to my attacker. If anyone out there is wondering,
right. Yes.
What happened?
Yeah.
So it occurred in August 8th, 1993. is when that's my survivor day. I call that my survivor day. So you always see me like say a few extra special words every day, every year on that day. But I got a call, was moved, to New Hampshire with my husband in 2005, and we were sitting up at our camp in April of 2006. We have a camp on Lake Winnipesaukee, and my phone rings, and it was like, Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. I'm like, oh no, someone in my family got in trouble back in Ohio, and then I answered the phone, and he was like, "Is this Christy Kelly?" And I wasn't married yet.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "We got him."
No way.
And I'm like, "Is someone messing with me?" Like, I just paused. It was like the longest, maybe like 10 seconds, but in my mind it felt like 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I just can still I still get like chills thinking about it. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We got him, Christy." And I'm just like, holy crap, like what?
Mm-hmm.
And and I've those decisions that I made initially after that, those horrific minutes, to get up, bang on the door, call the police, report, endure the invasive sexual assault exam, because the evidence that was taken had sat in a database, the CODIS database at the FBI maintains. It's a combined DNA indexing system. It sits in there for like these unsolved cold cases. And I started doing buccal swabs like later of if you're arrested for like X, Y, and Z, mostly felonies, your DNA of your jaw, you get a buccal swab, and it goes against this indexing system, and they cross-match to see if there's any, because the theory is you've committed crime, so they cross-reference it to all these cold cases, and lo and behold, mine pops up. So he had been arrested. So so it was just like, oh my God, like justice may finally will never truly be served in my mind. But knowing he's off the street now was like all I needed, right? It had been 13 years.
Wow.
So I had to go back, do the whole re-interview again, because of course all the original paperwork was flooded in a case file, that I had to go through all of it again, go before the grand jury, I did all of that, and, he was found guilty. I went back and read my victim impact statement, looked him in the eye, and listened as he was sentenced to prison for a very long time. And that was, he was arrested in 2006. The sentencing hearing was 2007, and he's still in prison today, you guys. Like, it's been like, and have I had to fight to make sure I keep every nail in the coffin? Yes. I've testified before parole board hearings. I've just made sure that I do everything in my power to ensure that he's going to serve every single day he possibly can. And, has it been easy? No, but again, back to my original statement, nothing's going to be harder than what you've already endured. And I want the survivors or people out there, if you're supporting survivors, if you've, some have to deal with this in your life, just to let people know, like, the justice system doesn't always pan out. I know that as being a retired federal agent, like, I've seen it fail quite a few times, but this is a story of hope and a story of justice did prevail and is still prevailing. And for me, fortunately, like, I got to see, him locked up for a very long time. So I just wanted to kind of come in and close, and he'll be up for parole next year, and I still will be speaking before the parole board hearing and making sure, he finishes all of his sentencing. But I just wanted to close out that loop of, if you're wondering what happened, and that's why it's so important, to share my story. And as horrible as it was, like, all the actions that I took, like, led to his arrest and the justice, that I deserved. Otherwise, had it not reported, how many people would he have harmed? Right. And it's something that it helps you heal, even though, it can't take away what happened, but turning that pain into something powerful to help others it's remarkable. And your voice does matter, no matter how insignificant that you feel it may not be. It is so significant. So
one thing I forgot to ask earlier, it actually kind of ties into that, is when you were in either the service or your law enforcement piece, like you said, you were doing investigations and such like that. Were there any times that it came up where you had to investigate a case that kind of hit close to home? And what did that? Yeah. What were your feelings with that? Like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, that was. Initially, I feel it. I never fully. It wasn't something I talked about. Obviously, it was never public. I didn't fully talk about it with a lot of people. So, my coworkers didn't know. Did my close friends know? And sometimes I work with them. Yes, but for me, it wasn't it wasn't oh, Agent Painchaud can't do that case because she was a victim. It was the reason I knew I could run that case better than anybody else. You know what I mean? It was also a reason why I could educate my peers and my coworkers on, quit being insensitive, quit, So I used it as a tool to help me benefit, I didn't publicly make it public no knowledge. One, just to protect, myself too. I didn't want, I testified multiple times. I didn't want an attorney eating me up on the stand with that. And ironically, so I retired in May of 2017. I got a call later that fall, and they're like, "Oh, we need you to come back and testify in a case in Oklahoma." I was like, okay, I'm retired. When you retire from the military, there's no going back. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we need you to come back. We're going to pay for you to fly to Oklahoma City, and we need you to leave New Year's Day." I'm like, what? And it was a sexual assault case. I'd interviewed, this person who was a witness to this case. And I'm thinking, to me, and this is keep in mind, the same time my wheels are spinning and I'm about to launch this Christy Painchaud, this Christy Survivor Journey. And what I took away from sitting in my room for 3 days, being on call, waiting to testify is no matter how insignificant I thought my investigative interview or piece was to the whole case, it meant something, and it meant something to this victim, and the guy was found guilty, but, I was like, this is your sign, Christy, from the universe to say, your voice matters. Yeah. And I had to go all the way to Oklahoma City, on New Year's Day, and it was okay, that, and, they didn't ask me about my personal history, but what I obviously, you under oath, you speak everything, but I was never asked. And I think had I chose to be very vocal and public about it early, it probably may have been an issue, but some cases were a little challenging, but if it, it was really sad, honestly, more so the little kid, the child abuse and those kind of cases. The child pornography, those are hard cases for anybody to digest, but, so I was very thorough with all of my investigations because I knew how crucial, the evidence had to be in order to, secure, a conviction or to make sure justice was served. Being very thorough with your investigation was the reason I probably was better than my peers sometimes in those kinds of cases.
Yeah, like you said, with making sure that the justice system fails in as little places as possible. Right. So that's why you have to just button everything up, dot every I, cross every T, everything.
Yeah, so, if evidence is misprocessed or mishandled, it can make or break a case. And unfortunately, you can't change it. Unfortunately, so.
Yeah. Marvin, do you have any questions that you want to ask before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you, Christy, for everything that you've done, for standing up, for using your voice to help other victims, and helping prevent others from becoming victims by empowering them. It's something that's, again, we said the theme is it's difficult. It's not easy to carry a firearm, to be accountable and own your own safety, but you're going above and beyond and helping others, using your story, using this difficult part of your life to bring that home for all of these young women and women of all ages to not have to be afraid and not have to worry about what's going to happen, and to say, you know what, Christy was strong. She testified. She never let up on what happened to her and made sure that the person who was responsible for, assaulting you was put away. And, going and testifying every year, they're up for parole. That's not easy. So we just want to say thank you for that. And I hope that every woman, every female that's listening takes your example and runs with it themselves. And, again, taking ownership for their own safety. But more than that, being, if they are a survivor, to stay strong and go ahead and ensure that they're not letting these things bring them down and continue on. and hopefully continue your work, maybe in their state, right? And say, hey, you know what? That's what I want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christy. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the listeners as a, kind of final thoughts from your side?
Oh, just, be a voice for yourself and a voice for others. And, I think knowledge is power, and, use the firearm as a tool to not only help you, live a self-reliant life, but also it can help you heal as well. So thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for providing your website, your Instagram, Facebook. And then just a reminder for us, our Instagram is Building the Basics Podcast. And then if you have questions, suggestions of future content or anything that you want to get in touch with us about, it's info@buildingthebasicspodcast.com. And just have a wonderful rest of your evening, Christy and Marvin. Thanks again for a great episode here. And to our listeners, thanks for sticking with us. And have a great night, everybody.